Mr. Wesley Jackson here is a very successful real estate lawyer, and you've been in the business for over 25 plus years.
Just under.
Just
Sorry.
under 25.
Okay. 2003 I started.
Okay, okay. And you have two offices, one in Brampton and one in Orangeville.
Correct, yes.
Yes, and you have contributed to many charities and foundations
Over
the course of your career.
Yep.
And I think you also ran for mayor in 2018.
Yeah, that was a fun time.
Okay, so I just wanted to ask you, right from the beginning, like what motivated you to get into law in the first place?
Specifically, I was sort of languishing in my undergrad. Didn't really see myself becoming an economist, and that was the program I was in at Waterloo. And I actually took a fair amount of time off of school, and I was out, working various jobs, a couple temp agencies, and just sort of, to use the expression, found my calling. Just decided, law is something I'd always sort of passively been interested in. Started studying for the LSAT. Really decided that it was something that I was excited about, and so I refocused myself, finished up my bachelor's, wrote the LSAT exam, got accepted to Western, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Wow. And what year that would be?
So I started my law school in 1999, so my sort of time off of school would have been 97, 98, that range.
Okay, perfect. So how was your experience when you first was a new graduate, right when you started your practice as a lawyer? How was your experience in the first few years?
Humbling, because to become a lawyer, you finish law school, then you do a period called articling, which is you're basically an apprentice. And my articling job was out in Kitchener, but I was living in Brampton. And so when I got my license, I was like, great, I'm a lawyer now. And I got myself a phone, and I was all very, very excited. And my wife went off to work, and I sat and I stared at my phone, and nothing happened. 3 days in a row. And, it dawned on me very, very quickly, it's all fine and dandy that I'm a lawyer, but unless anybody knows I'm a lawyer, why would my phone ring?
Yes.
And I think when I talk to young people who want to start a business, and I say to them, who is your client going to be? And I don't say clients, I say client, because you got to get your first client.
Yes.
And everyone always has the same answer. It's like, well, anyone with money. I'm going to be a graphic designer. Anyone with money can hire me to do graphic design work. It's like, no, not. Right. But how does anyone with money know you're a graphic designer?
Unless you put yourself out there.
You need something far more concrete. So
yes.
I'll pick on graphic designers. I want to be a graphic designer. People who want to bring in an anime style of art into a business. Well, that's more concrete than anyone with money. And so I really try and encourage young entrepreneurs and young lawyers. I have a couple of mentees who I'm always kind of drill down on this, right? And it's like, well, why do you want that to be your customer? What about that customer excites you? Because if you're not excited about your customer's not going to be excited about you in return.
Right.
And it's when you can develop that synergy that your business stands a chance of success. And so in our business, we're very casual. We're not, what I call an ivory tower law firm. We're not on the 90th floor of some skyscraper. We're not all wearing three-piece suits. And our clients really appreciate about that because they feel comfortable talking to us. They feel comfortable asking us questions. They know that they can relate to us in a very personable way. And that actually helps us serve the client because they're not withholding information. They're telling us what we need to know about them and about their case, about, if they were planning their will, about their family. We can have those like really sincere discussions.
Right.
And so because there's that synergy, this firm has been successful since I started it in 2009. But yeah, getting back to my story, I abandoned the idea of just being a lawyer, quote unquote, and I went to work for a firm.
Okay.
Because I realized until I had a local reputation, until I had clients and people who would refer me work, I would just be staring at my phone. So I went to work for a firm, developed those skills, developed a network, developed referral sources, parted ways with my employer on very positive terms. They're not actually that far down the street. We still refer work back and forth. And yeah, I've been building it since 2003.
Perfect. So you've been in Brampton for over 25 years now, and you have like a very close connection with Brampton and its people. So what do you find so special about this city?
So yeah, we moved to Brampton in 1983. We started in Bramalea and we moved up to Heart Lake. When I
I
first got,
think I remember reading that you grew up in Heart Lake.
yeah. So our first house was on Knightsbridge.
Okay.
And then we moved up to Kennedy and Conestoga,
Okay.
where my family lived until I was done in law school. And then I got married and I was living on Silver Maple.
Okay.
Lived there for a few years, and we were at Center and Queen.
Okay.
And now we're down sort of near Shoppers World. What I love about this city, from just a place to live point of view, is there's nothing you can't get to.
Right.
If you want to gamble, you can get to the casinos. If you want to snowmobile, you can get to snowmobiling. If you want to go out on the water, you can get to the lake.
Yeah.
You just want to go to tourist attractions, you can get to Toronto, you can get to Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
Even Ottawa is only really a 6-hour drive away.
Yeah.
Which it is a long drive, but the train ride is only 6-8 hours-ish, depending on which route you take. You can really get to really anything you want. We have in the sort of golden triangle, Niagara Falls, Toronto.
Yes.
Cottage country is only a couple hours away. Really everything you could possibly want, you can get to from Brampton. So it really is a really nice anchor, and I think that's why it's such a perfect bedroom community. And by and large, the people of Brampton are much like me, just hardworking people who want to live a nice balanced life, and so they are. I grew up with a lot of people who are really did very well in college athletics. I went to school with and grew up with people who are very academically inclined, and all those opportunities are here.
Yes.
You didn't grow up thinking, that college or university was something that I had to move really far away from home to access.
Yes.
Get access to all of it. Now, obviously, there's a push to bring a lot of those amenities into town. We want to expand our universities, we want to expand our colleges, we want to bring more employers to Brampton, and that's largely because of the growth. I used to be able to, from our house in Heart Lake, our really close relatives lived in Barrie. It was a 40-minute drive back then. Well, now you can barely get to Bolton in 40 minutes. So there is a real need to bring things closer and into the borders of Brampton, and that's fine. We'll figure out a way to do that.
Yes.
And those opportunities are all here.
Perfect. Perfect. It's so inspiring because considering there's so many people who look to move away from Brampton, it's really nice to get the perspective of what keeps you rooted in the city.
For sure.
So I just wanted to ask you, you were a mayoral candidate in 2018. I just wanted to know what your experience was like.
Oh, it was, again, humbling, a great learning experience. I met so many people, some of whom I'm still in contact with. It was a particularly difficult time, I think, in the city of Brampton. And, the city was very divided over, a few key political choices that had been made. And without rehashing all of that, and I think there was a real appetite in Brampton to just move past the division and get on to, the next thing that would kind of bring the city together. And a few of those seeds were planted, and without getting into the nitty-gritty of it, there's still some issues which linger. There's still some divisions in the city which linger, and hopefully, in this election, we get a slate of candidates who are focused on moving past those things and onto some footing where everyone can agree and we can start building things again.
Okay.
And that's frankly what Brampton needs to do, is get back to building things.
Yeah, I agree completely. So I wanted to ask you, what are some easy ways an average person can do their civic duty in the city?
Number one, vote. Provincially, federally, municipally, the trend is downward. Nobody's voting, And politicians salivate over that because they know that they just need a motivated core. Motivated cores are deciding elections, not the general population anymore, because not enough people show up to vote. That's number one. Number two, you should have your city councilor, regional councilor, and the mayor's office in your address book. You should have your MPP's information in your address book, your MP's information in your address book. And you should, at least once a year, write a letter to all of those people.
Okay.
Just put them all on the same letter and just say, here's what I need from you. You're not there to air grievances. You're not there to say, I think you're a jerk. I think you smell funny. Here's what I need. Here's why we need investments in our hospital. My child fell and broke her arm, and it was 8 hours before she had a cast. Whatever the story is. And they all need to hear it from everybody.
Right.
Because a letter they receive is worth, 10 tweets. Because you actually took the time to write a letter. And you can email it to all of them. You just create a little distribution list. Go to the town halls that our elected officials hold. Call into the teletown halls. Go to your public libraries when they're having information sessions. When you're driving down the street and there's a vacant lot near your house and they say, notice of public planning meeting, go. You only have to go for a few minutes. Just sign the register that you were there. Often, especially the atrium of City Hall or the atrium of the Civic Center beside the Bramley City Center, they'll have large public displays where you can sign up to be put on email notification lists for big incoming projects, big transit projects especially, rezoning, replanning efforts. Just let them know that you're watching. Put yourself on the email distribution list, even if you never read an email.
Okay.
When they know the citizenship is engaged, they know they're being quote unquote watched, then they know that they have to do right by their constituents, because now you have a more motivated core.
Yes.
And whether they know you and have met you, whether you've donated to their campaign or not, they know that they get a letter from you and they know that you show up at public meetings. So they're going to worry about what you have to say.
Okay.
Above and beyond that, you can join some of the great organizations we have in town, whether it be Kiwanis or Rotary, the Kinsmen. Get involved in your local religious organization because they have a lot of outreach programs and groups that meet. And so when you add your voice to others' voices, whether it's even just, and I'll just make up a name, the Friends of Jackson group, and you have a Facebook group, and as a group, there's only 5 of you, but you send a letter. I'm going to pick on some friends of mine. Chris Drew and Kevin Montgomery are very well recognized voices because they've formed small transit and cycling advocacy groups.
Okay.
And they're vocal. And because they're a group, and because there's a group of them, that elevated their voice. So that politicians paid more attention. A letter from 5 people is seen as sort of louder than a letter from one person. Right. So it doesn't even have to be overly organized. It can be your bridge club. It can be a group at your, like I say, your that through your church, for example. It can just be anything. And if you have kids, you take your kids to the library and you look at the community announcement boards. That can help you stay involved and up to date on some of the issues and get the information. Yeah. And when you stay informed, it's going to be really, really easy to send that letter, whether it's once a year, even if once every 2 years, just something. To just say, I saw the community announcement about, here's what I need, just so you know. And it doesn't take long. Yeah. It really, really doesn't. And the number of people who I'm still in contact with from 2018, who say, did you keep up with? Are you still following this story? Are you still following... For me, a huge project is rapid transit on Queen, to connect to the Vaughan Rapid Transit on Queen.
Yes.
And so again, I'm pick on Chris Drew, who I've already mentioned. He'll still send me articles and updates about that project because he knows I was passionate about it, and I know he's passionate about it. And so we're still communicating. So, when he's talking to politicians, they know that he keeps up with other citizens who are equally engaged on those particular issues. So even if my name's not on his letter, when his name comes across the desk, they know he's involved, he has a sphere of influence. And so the politicians will listen. So it's really not hard to elevate your own sphere of influence.
Yes.
By really minimal effort. on staying informed and staying engaged. So I really encourage everybody. And in Reddit, where I met the two of you, I've said about certain issues.
Yes.
Please write to your counselor. Tell them you're angry. Tell them your suggestions about this issue. And this is going back to before the 2018 election, but the Riverstone Golf Club, when the city was considering buying those lands, grassroots advocacy is just about organizing people to just tell the politicians how you feel about this. And when that debate was before council, and ultimately we all know they decided to buy it, the councillors were able to refer to, I've received X number of letters from citizens. You make your voice known, and it will have an impact on the discussion when decisions are being made.
That's very valuable advice, I must say. So I just want to ask you, so you're a real estate lawyer. So what are your thoughts on the dramatic changes which have happened from last year to this year? So
it's complicated, as all things are with this amount of money. What's good for sellers and what's good for buyers are two different things.
Yes.
So a price correction is probably good for buyers. One of the things that I'm hoping comes out of this, quote unquote turmoil, is that buyers need to understand a fundamental of finance. Okay, I hear too many people say, "I'm buying a house because I don't want to be a renter." It's like, yes, but instead of renting a house, you're now renting money, because that's what a mortgage is. You're renting the money from the banks. And when the rent on money was cheap, people were renting too much money.
Yes.
And you saw a very rapid escalation in the price of houses because people wanted to rent the money while the renting was good, when they could get a rate under 2%. Now, to get those rates, people agreed to variable rate mortgages. And now the pain is coming. And because people can't rent the money as cheaply, they're not in quite such a rush to overpay for the real estate. So, but when you crunch the numbers, okay, and realtors are starting to do this, and you're seeing it on Facebook, you're seeing it on Twitter, they'll say, yeah, if you buy a house at $1.4 million and you're renting the money at 1.9%, your annual cost of ownership is X. But now that the price has come down, if you bought that house at $1 million, even though it costs you more for the money, your annual cost of ownership is still only a couple $100 different.
Yes.
So don't be afraid. The price escalation was due to the reduced cost of money. Yeah, well, now the money's more, the house is less. What does that actually cost you at the end of the year? And the big question mark is going to be, how honestly did people respond to the stress test? Because a year ago, if you were qualified under the stress test rules and you were honest about it, you were qualified at 5.8%. Well, now that interest rates are approaching 5.8% on the long-term fixed rates, you should be okay.
Yes.
And so when people come to me and say, well, I can no longer afford my mortgage, I don't say anything, but it begs the question, well, what did you say when you were going through the stress test analysis?
Right.
Because if you were honest, you may not like the new numbers, but you can afford them.
Right.
So there are unfortunately people caught in the crosshairs of, buying at the peak, and then, so they bought, say, at 1.4, and the house is now assessing at 1.2,
Yes.
or maybe even 1. Yeah, it's going to take them a long time for that price correction to catch up in their favor. Now, if they bought wisely, even if they overpaid, and this is a principle of finance, it's also a principle of long-term real estate holdings, it's not the timing of the market, it's time in the market.
Yes.
If you bought a house, even if you overpaid and you hold that house for 20 years, on the margins it will affect you, but it really won't affect you in the long term.
Yes.
Your
that's
house will appreciate over that 20-year period.
right. Yes.
If you were a short-term investor, if you were a flipper, it's going to be painful because you
Right.
overpaid and you will have lost money. There's no way to soften that news.
Yes.
But if you keep time in the market as your guiding principle, yeah, on a 20-year horizon, your rate of return will maybe be affected by 0.5%. You'll
Yes.
make 8% instead of 8.5.
Yes.
Okay. Just like the stock market. That happens in the stock market too, but it's not the timing of the market, it's time in the market. So hopefully people realize, I was honest on the stress test, I can afford it, and 20 years from now when I look back, it's all going to wash out. So, it feels painful, but it feels more painful than it actually is.
Yes,
Don't panic.
I think you're absolutely right in that. My last question to you would be to people who are just starting new businesses or new careers. At the very start of their career, it can be quite daunting. So how would you advise them, especially when they have to start, it can be quite daunting to start a new business. What would your advice be to these people, be it any profession?
Cash is king.
Okay.
You can very quickly bury yourself in debt. Try to minimize your debts early on, and debt in every form. A 5-year lease on your office space is a debt. A line of credit is a debt. I've seen young entrepreneurs, and luckily the examples I'm thinking of, it was fine for them. But a young realtor, and who I won't name, but they know your clients judge you based on your car. They ran out and they bought the most expensive BMW they could get approved for. And it's like, you haven't sold a house yet. How are you going to pay for a BMW? And it's like, well, it's all part of it. It's all part of it. You have to present the image to get the clients to be in the class of buyers. And I get it, but you have to watch the cash flow. There are so many great businesses that fail because they don't manage their cash flow properly. And they just can't pay their suppliers and they get shut down and they have to start over. So watch out for cash flow. Where you can, hire contractors versus staff in the beginning, because again, an employee is a debt.
Yes.
Their annual salary, their benefits, their time away. Now, that's not said, not in an exploitative way, but if you can work with contractors to get you through until you have a cash reserve, then bring on the employees. And sometimes you convert contractors to employees, but it enables you to decide who you want to work with, what your working style is. I've had great contractors who aren't great for me. Just their style is different than my style. And the staff that I have, my senior law clerk has been with me 11 years.
Wow. Okay.
Because we work so well together and our working style it matches. Where I've brought in contractors, bookkeeping, accounting, and that's 100% appropriate. I would never bring on an accounting staff member.
Yeah.
It's not an accounting firm, but the other principle is, sell your strength, buy your weakness.
Right.
My weakness is accounting. I brought in a great accountant, and I don't begrudge paying great accountant fees. You know what I mean? So yeah, you're selling your strengths, hiring your weaknesses, and at the end of the day, really try to mesh your personality with whatever it is you're selling.
Right.
If you think about the difference between an Apple and a Windows-based PC, Apples look different, they work different, they feel different, the marketing was different.
Yes.
That is the Apple personality. It's the Apple brand. And when you can genuinely, integrate your personality with your brand, it's going to be sincere and honest. Your customers will pick up on it. So if you've identified a need in the marketplace that will respond to your brand, you're going to make money. Just avoid the rookie mistakes of overspending early. You'll be fine. Now, sometimes you have a brand that the market is just not interested in. New Coke, Crystal Pepsi, see-through. These are giants of industry who thought of a brand, and the market was just not interested. That happens. It happens to the giants like Coke and Pepsi. It's going to happen to entrepreneurs. It's not that the idea wasn't good. There's just something about the execution of it. So always be evaluating. Always seek feedback from your customers. What did you like about us? What did you not like about us? What can we fix? And at the end of the day, you'll hammer it out. It's painful to hear that your first customer didn't like hiring you. Is it okay? But get past that. You didn't like me. What didn't you like?
Yes.
Oh, I wasn't responsive quickly enough to emails. It's so easy to fix. Then your second customer's happier.
Yes.
Until you get through those first few years where your customer satisfaction rating is low. Well, by the end of the 5th year, you're going to be hitting 100%, 100%, 100%. Your Google reviews are going to be 5 stars almost every time because you swallowed your pride long enough to listen to the negative feedback to fix the problems.
Yes.
And I tell people all the time, I don't bat 1,000. I don't claim to bat 1,000. You know, but when you miss, don't ignore it because it hurts your pride. Circle back, find out what went wrong, and make sure you never do it again. You know, it can really be, even though it's that hard, it can be that simple.
Yes.
So,
Thank you so much for doing this interview for
Oh,
us.
my pleasure.
And I hope that our audience gains a lot of, insightful advice which you have, given throughout this interview. Thank you once again.
oh, thank you.